The woman appeared at the edge of Dawson Ridge's land on a Tuesday morning in late September of 1882, when the Montana grasslands still held the green of summer, but the aspens had begun their golden transformation. He saw her from his position near the north fence line, a solitary figure walking with determination across the open plain that bordered his property, and something about the way she moved made him pause in his work and watch. Most travelers stuck to the main road that ran 3 miles east of his ranch, the road that connected Alpine to the larger towns beyond. This woman was walking cross-country, her skirts hitched up practical-like to keep them from dragging through the tall grass, a worn satchel slung across her body. Even from a distance, Dawson could see she was tired. Her steps had that particular heaviness that came from walking too far without rest. He left his tools where they lay and started toward her, his long stride eating up the distance between them. As he got closer, he could make out more details. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair escaping from beneath a simple bonnet. Her dress had once been a fine blue cotton but now showed the dust and wear of hard travel. When she noticed him approaching, she stopped walking and stood her ground, chin lifted in a way that suggested she expected trouble but would not run from it. "Morning," Dawson said when he was close enough to speak without shouting. He touched the brim of his hat out of habit, the gesture his mother had drilled into him before she passed. "You look like you have been walking quite a ways." The woman's eyes were the color of winter moss, green-gray and guarded. "I have," she admitted. Her voice was steady despite the obvious exhaustion in her frame. "I am looking to cut across to the eastern road. Someone in town told me this land connects to it. I was hoping the owner might permit me passage." "This is my land," Dawson said. "And yes, it does connect to the road about 5 miles that direction." He gestured eastward. "But that is a fair distance yet, and you look like you have been walking since dawn, perhaps longer." She straightened her shoulders, a flash of pride in her eyes. "I can make 5 miles. I just need permission to cross. I will not trouble you beyond that." Dawson studied her for a long moment. She had a fine-boned face, the kind that would age into elegant lines rather than harsh ones, and there was intelligence in those moss-colored eyes. She also had the look of someone who had been dealing with trouble for quite some time and expected more of it around every corner. "Name is Dawson Ridge," he said. "This is the Ridge Ranch. Been in my family since my father staked the claim in '68. The woman hesitated, then seemed to decide that sharing her own name was fair payment for passage. "Wilhelmina Everett. Most people call me Mina." "Well, Miss Everett, I will make you a deal. My house is about a mile south. You come back with me, have some breakfast and rest a bit, and then I will walk you across my land myself. 5 miles is not so far, but you look like you could use a meal and some water before you attempt it." "I do not need charity," Mina said quickly. Too quickly. "Did not figure you did," Dawson replied evenly. "But I was about to head back for my own breakfast anyway, and my housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, always makes enough for a half-dozen ranch hands whether they show up or not. Food will just go to waste. Seems foolish when you have miles yet to walk." He watched her weigh her options. Pride warred with practicality across her expressive face. Finally, practicality won. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I would appreciate that." They walked side by side across the rolling grassland. Dawson kept his pace measured, noticing how she was favoring her left foot slightly. "Blisters, most likely." He did not comment on it. "You traveling alone?" he asked after a few minutes of silence. "Yes. Long way from anywhere to be traveling alone." Mina glanced at him, trying to judge whether he was being critical or merely curious. "I had a companion. She fell ill in Alpine 3 days ago. I stayed with her until she recovered enough to take the stage back to her family in Butte. I am continuing on to Billings. Billings is a fair distance yet. You walking the whole way? I have enough money for the stage from the next town over, but I needed to save where I could, and the stage coach fare from Alpine was too dear. Dawson nodded. He understood the arithmetic of being poor, the constant calculation of what could be afforded and what could not. He had done plenty of that arithmetic in the years after his father died and left him with a ranch that was more debt than asset. That had been 5 years ago. He was 30 now, and the ranch was finally starting to turn a real profit, but he remembered what it felt like to count every penny. The ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was a solid structure of logs and stone, built to withstand Montana winters. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Dawson could smell bread baking even at this distance. His stomach rumbled in anticipation. Mrs. Chen looked up from the stove when they entered through the kitchen door, her weathered face showing surprise at the sight of a strange woman in her domain. Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Everett. She is walking through to the eastern road, and I have invited her to join us for breakfast first. Miss Everett, Mrs. Chen is the only reason this household runs with any sort of order. The older woman's expression softened slightly. She was Chinese, had come to Montana during the mining rushes of the 70s with her husband. When he died in a cave-in, she had needed work, and Dawson had needed someone to manage his house. It had been a good arrangement for both of them these past 3 years. You sit, Mrs. Chen said to Mina, pointing to the large wooden table that dominated the kitchen. I bring food. Mina sank into the offered chair with poorly concealed relief. Now that they were in the light of the kitchen, Dawson could see the shadows of exhaustion under her eyes, the tightness of pain around her mouth. She had been pushing herself hard. Let me get you some water first, he said, pumping fresh water into a clean tin cup and setting it before her. She drank it down in long, thirsty gulps, and he refilled it without comment. Mrs. Chen moved around the kitchen with efficient grace, and within minutes the table was laden with fresh bread, scrambled eggs, bacon, and fried potatoes. Mina's eyes widened at the spread. This is too much, she said. I cannot possibly eat all this. Then eat what you can, Dawson said, settling into the chair across from her with his own plate. Mrs. Chen is right that the ranch hands will finish whatever we leave. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Dawson watched Mina try to eat slowly with proper manners when it was clear she wanted to wolf down the food. When was the last time she had eaten a proper meal? Yesterday morning. The day before. What is in Billings? He asked, keeping his tone casual. Mina finished chewing before answering. A teaching position. At least, I hope there still is. I corresponded with the school board there, and they offered me a job starting in October. I was supposed to arrive 2 weeks ago, but there were delays. The man I was engaged to marry was supposed to accompany me, but he changed his mind at the last moment about leaving Boston. There was a world of hurt in that simple statement, though Mina's voice remained steady. Dawson felt an unexpected surge of anger toward a man he had never met, a man who would make promises to a woman like this and then break them. His loss, Dawson said simply. Mina looked up, startled, and for the first time the guardedness in her eyes softened just a fraction. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. Takes courage to make a journey like this alone, especially after being disappointed like that. Easier to just go home, lick your wounds. I have no home to go back to, Mina said quietly. My parents passed last year within months of each other. My father's business failed and there were debts. The house had to be sold. I had been living with my fiancé's family, which became awkward after he broke the engagement. The teaching position in Billings was my chance to start fresh somewhere new. I cannot afford to lose it. Dawson understood that too. Sometimes the only way forward was to keep moving, even when everything in you wanted to collapse. After breakfast, Mina excused herself to wash up, and Mrs. Chen directed her to the washroom. While she was gone, the older woman fixed Dawson with a knowing look. "That girl is hurting," Mrs. Chen said in her direct way. "Not just feet, heart too." "I know," Dawson said. "You going to walk her across your land?" Said I would. 5 miles there, 5 miles back, that is most of your day. The fence work will keep until tomorrow. Mrs. Chen made a small humming sound that could have meant anything. "I pack food for the journey, and I have salve for blisters. You make sure she takes it." When Mina returned, looking somewhat refreshed, Mrs. Chen pressed a wrapped packet of food into her hands and a small tin of salve. "For your feet," the older woman said firmly. "I see you limping. You take care of them or they get worse." Tears suddenly brightened Mina's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have both been so kind." The walk across the Ridge Ranch took longer than it should have. Dawson set an easy pace, stopping occasionally to point out landmarks or tell stories about the land. He told himself he was just being a good host, giving her a chance to rest without making it obvious. But the truth was, he was enjoying her company. Mina was well educated and had traveled more than most people in this part of Montana. She told him about Boston, about the tall ships in the harbor and the libraries full of more books than a person could read in a lifetime. She talked about teaching, about how she loved working with children, helping them discover that learning could be an adventure rather than a chore. In turn, Dawson told her about the ranch, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands, of watching calves grow into strong cattle, of the way the land changed with the seasons. He told her about his father, who had dreamed of creating something lasting out here in the Montana Territory, and his mother, who had died when Dawson was 15, worn down by the hard life but never complaining. "You run the ranch alone?" Mina asked. "I have 4 regular hands who help with the cattle work, and I hire extra men during branding and roundup. But the day-to-day managing, that is me. My younger brother was supposed to partner with me, but he found ranch life too dull. He went to California 2 years back, looking for more excitement. Have not heard from him in months." There was old hurt in that admission, the pain of being left behind by someone you loved. Mina seemed to sense it. "Families are complicated," she said softly. "We disappoint each other even when we do not mean to." "Yes," Dawson agreed. "That is true enough." They stopped by a creek that cut through the property, and Dawson suggested they rest a bit. Mina sank down on a flat rock near the water's edge, and Dawson pretended not to notice her wincing as she did. The sun was high overhead now, warm despite the advancing autumn. "This is beautiful land," Mina said, looking out over the grassland that rolled away to the mountains in the distance. "I can see why your father wanted to build something here." "It is not as civilized as Boston," Dawson said. "No," Mina agreed, "but civilized is not always better. Cities can be just as harsh as wilderness in their own ways. At least here you can see trouble coming from a long way off." Dawson laughed at that, a real laugh that surprised him. "That is a fair point." They sat by the creek for perhaps 20 minutes, sharing some of the food Mrs. Chen had packed, talking about small things and large ones. Dawson found himself telling Mina about his hopes for the ranch, how he wanted to improve his cattle stock, maybe build a bigger house eventually, start a real family. She listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions. When they resumed walking, the conversation flowed easier. Mina told him about books she had read, stories from mythology and history. Dawson told her about the practical challenges of ranching, the constant battle against weather and predators, and simple bad luck. They were from completely different worlds, and yet something in their conversation felt natural, as if they had known each other much longer than a few hours. The eastern road finally came into view as the sun started its descent toward afternoon. It was a well-worn track that saw regular stage-coach traffic between towns. From here, Mina could follow it north to the next settlement, where she would catch her stage to Billings. They stood at the edge of Dawson's property, where his land met the public road, and suddenly neither of them seemed quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you," Mina said, "for your kindness today, for the meal and the company and for walking with me. You did not have to do any of it." "I know," Dawson said. He hesitated, then plunged ahead before he could talk himself out of it. "Miss Everett, Mina, I know we just met, and this is going to sound strange, but I feel like I should say it anyway. You do not have to go to Billings." Mina's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean you could stay here, at the ranch. Not in any improper way," he added quickly, feeling heat rise in his face. "Mrs. Chen has quarters in the house, and you could too. I need help with the books and correspondence. My handwriting is terrible, and I am even worse at keeping proper records. You are educated, good with figures and letters. It would be honest work, fair wages. Mr. Ridge, I appreciate the offer, but I have a teaching position waiting for me in Billings. I gave my word." "I know, and I respect that. But if things do not work out there, if the position has been filled, or if Billings does not suit you, remember you have another option. Here." Mina studied his face, trying to read his intentions. "Why would you offer that? You barely know me." Dawson chose his words carefully. "Because in the few hours I have known you, I have enjoyed your company more than I have enjoyed anyone's in a very long time. Because you are clearly intelligent and capable, and I think you would be an asset to the ranch. And because something in my gut tells me you are supposed to be here. I learned to trust that feeling a long time ago." A dozen emotions flickered across Mina's face too quickly for Dawson to identify them all. Finally, she nodded slowly. "If things do not work out in Billings, I will remember your offer. Thank you, Mr. Ridge." "Dawson," he said. "Please." "Dawson," she repeated, and he liked the sound of his name in her voice. They stood there another moment, prolonging the farewell. Then Mina straightened her shoulders, adjusted her satchel, and offered him her hand in a businesslike handshake. Her hand was small in his, calloused from work despite her educated background. He held it perhaps a moment longer than was strictly proper. "Goodbye, Dawson." "Goodbye, Mina. Safe travels." He watched her walk north along the road until she was just a small figure in the distance, then stood there a while longer after she disappeared from view. The day suddenly felt emptier than it had that morning. He had been alone on this ranch for years now, had grown accustomed to solitude, even preferred it. But somehow, in the space of half a day, this woman had made him realize how lonely that solitude truly was. Finally, he turned and started the long walk back to the ranch house. The 5 miles felt much longer going back. Mrs. Chen looked up when he entered the kitchen, taking in his expression with her sharp eyes. "The girl is gone." "Yes. You asked her to stay." Dawson should not have been surprised that Mrs. Chen had guessed. "I did. She has a job waiting in Billings. She is going there. And if the job does not work out, I told her she could come back here, that I would hire her to help with the ranch work, the bookkeeping and such." Mrs. Chen made that humming sound again. "You like this girl?" It was not a question, but Dawson answered anyway. "Yes, I like her. She seems like a good woman, smart, brave too, to travel alone like that after being hurt." "Yes," Dawson agreed. "She is all of those things." He spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work, but his mind kept wandering back to Mina Everett. to the way she had looked at his land with appreciation, rather than seeing it as empty wasteland. To the sound of her laugh when he had told her about the time he had accidentally gotten himself tangled in his own lasso. To the intelligence in her eyes when they talked about books and ideas and dreams. He had courted a few women over the years, had even come close to proposing to a girl from Alpine 3 years back. But she had ultimately decided she did not want to be a rancher's wife, with all the hard work and isolation that entailed. He had not blamed her. Ranch life was not for everyone. He had told himself he did not mind being alone, that he had his work and his land, and that was enough. But now he knew that was a lie he had been telling himself. He did mind being alone. He wanted someone to share this life with, to talk to over breakfast, to plan the future with. He wanted what his parents had before the land wore his mother down, a partnership built on mutual respect and affection. And somehow, after just half a day, he wanted that someone to be Wilhelmina Everett, which was ridiculous, he told himself firmly. You could not fall for someone in just a few hours. It was not reasonable or logical. But then, when had feelings ever been reasonable or logical 3 weeks past? Dawson threw himself into work, preparing the ranch for winter. There was fence to repair, hay to cut and store, cattle to move to lower pastures. He worked from dawn until well after dark most days, trying to tire himself out enough that he would not lie awake at night thinking about a woman with moss-colored eyes. It helped, but not as much as he had hoped. On a cold October morning, Dawson was working in the barn when he heard a horse approaching. Visitors were rare enough that he stopped what he was doing and walked out to see who had come calling. The rider was one of the hands from the neighboring ranch, young Tommy Parsons, who sometimes helped out during roundup. "Morning, Dawson," Tommy said, dismounting. "Got a message for you from town. Stage driver asked me to bring it out, said it was important." He handed over a sealed envelope. Dawson turned it over, not recognizing the handwriting. He thanked Tommy, offered him coffee which the young man declined, and waited until he had ridden off before opening the letter. The handwriting was neat and precise, clearly educated. "Dear Mr. Ridge, I hope this letter finds you well. You told me to let you know if things did not work out in Billings. I am writing to inform you that they did not. When I arrived, I discovered that the school board had already filled the teaching position. There was a miscommunication about dates, and they assumed I was not coming. They have no other openings at present. I have been in Billings for 3 weeks, taking what work I can find, but employment opportunities for single women are limited, and what is available is not always respectable. I am quickly running through what little money I have left. If your offer of employment still stands, I would like to accept it. I'm a hard worker and a fast learner, and I promise you will not regret giving me this chance. I can take the stage back to Alpine and walk out to your ranch from there, as I did before. I should arrive within the week if the weather holds. Respectfully yours, Wilhelmina Everett. Dawson read the letter twice, then a third time, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. She was coming back. He immediately began making preparations. He cleaned out the spare room next to Mrs. Chen's quarters, the one his brother had used before leaving for California. It had been serving as a storage room, filled with odds and ends, but he cleared it out, swept and scrubbed until it was spotless. Mrs. Chen watched this activity with knowing eyes but said nothing, merely helped him find linens for the bed and curtains for the window. "You should ride to Alpine," Mrs. Chen said finally. "Meet her there. Long walk from town." Dawson had been thinking the same thing. "I will go tomorrow morning." Wait for the stage. He was up before dawn the next day, too restless to sleep. He took his best horse, a steady chestnut mare named Rosie, and made good time to Alpine. The town was small, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a handful of houses clustered around it. The stage stop was at the hotel, a modest two-story building that offered rooms to travelers. He waited, trying not to look as anxious as he felt. The stage was supposed to arrive around noon, but travel times were unpredictable. It could be hours late, or not come at all if there had been trouble on the road. The sun was high overhead when he finally heard the distant rattle of the approaching stage. He stood, brushing dust from his trousers, his heart beating faster than it should. The stage pulled up in a cloud of dust, and the driver jumped down to help the passengers alight. An older man emerged first, then a younger couple, and then Mina. She looked thinner than she had 3 weeks ago, and there were new shadows under her eyes. But her face lit up when she saw Dawson waiting, a genuine smile that transformed her features. "Mr. Ridge," she said, coming toward him. "Dawson, I did not expect you to meet me here." "Did not seem right to make you walk the whole way again," he said, returning her smile. "I brought a horse. We can ride back together." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. That is very kind." He helped her secure her traveling bag, which seemed heavier than the simple satchel she had carried before. She must have acquired a few things in Billings. He mounted Rosie first, then offered his hand to help Mina up behind him. She hesitated only a moment before accepting, settling onto the horse behind him. It was not the most proper arrangement, but it was practical, and Dawson suspected Mina had learned to value practical over proper. "Hold on," he said, and felt her arms circle his waist. The contact sent a jolt through him, an awareness of her closeness, her warmth against his back. The ride to the ranch took a couple of hours. They talked easily, catching up on the past few weeks. Mina told him about Billings, about her disappointment at finding the teaching position filled, about the difficult weeks that followed as she tried to find decent work. "I worked for a time in a boarding house, cleaning rooms and helping with cooking," she said. "The owner was kind enough, but the pay was barely enough to cover my own room and meals. I knew I could not stay there long term. Your offer kept coming back to me, and finally I realized I was being foolish not to accept it." "I am glad you wrote," Dawson said. "I have been hoping you would." He felt her arms tighten slightly around him, a wordless acknowledgement of his words. When they arrived at the ranch, Mrs. Cheng came out to greet them, her weathered face creasing in welcome. "Miss Everett, good to see you again. Please call me Mina, and thank you, Mrs. Chen." "It is good to be back." Dawson showed Mina to her room, suddenly seeing it through her eyes and hoping it was adequate. It was simple but clean, with a bed, a dresser, a small table and chair by the window. The window looked out over the grassland to the east toward the mountains. "It is perfect," Mina said softly, setting her bag on the bed. "Thank you, Dawson, for all of this." "You are welcome. Get settled, rest if you need to. We can talk about work tomorrow. Tonight, just make yourself at home." Over dinner that evening, they worked out the practical arrangements. Dawson explained what he needed help with, the bookkeeping and correspondence that he had been neglecting. Mina would also help Mrs. Chen with some of the household management, ordering supplies and such. In return, she would receive room and board plus a monthly wage that was fair, maybe even generous. "I will work hard," Mina promised. "I will not let you down." "I know you will not," Dawson said, and meant it. The first week passed quickly as they settled into new routines. Mina proved to be everything Dawson had hoped and more. She was organized and efficient, quickly making sense of his chaotic record-keeping. She had a good head for numbers and suggested several ways he could improve his financial tracking. She wrote letters to potential cattle buyers in a clear, persuasive hand. She helped Mrs. Chen develop better systems for managing household supplies, But more than her practical skills, Dawson valued her presence. The house felt more alive with her in it. She hummed while she worked, old songs he half remembered from childhood. She asked thoughtful questions about the ranch, genuinely interested in learning how everything worked. She had opinions about things and was not afraid to share them, though she always did so respectfully. In the evenings, after dinner, they often sat in the main room and talked. Sometimes Mina would read aloud from the books she had brought with her, stories and poetry. Dawson found himself looking forward to these evenings more than anything else in his day. One night, about 2 weeks after Mina's arrival, they were sitting by the fire after dinner. Mrs. Chen had retired to her room, and the house was quiet except for the crackle of burning wood. Mina was mending one of Dawson's shirts, something she had insisted on doing despite his protests that it was not part of her duties. "Can I ask you something personal?" Dawson said. Mina looked up from her sewing. "Of course. You regret leaving Boston. Coming all this way, even though things did not work out as you planned." She was quiet for a moment, considering. "No," she said finally. "I do not regret it. What I regret is wasting time on someone who did not value me the way I deserve to be valued. But leaving Boston, taking the risk of starting somewhere new, that was the right choice. Even with all the difficulties, I would make the same choice again." "Your former fiancé was a fool," Dawson said quietly. Mina smiled slightly. "You said that before. It bears repeating." She set down her sewing and looked at him directly. "Why did you really ask me to stay, Dawson? And please be honest with me." He held her gaze, knowing this was a moment that mattered. "Because from the moment I saw you walking across my land, something in me recognized something in you. Like calling to like, I cannot explain it better than that. And because after you left, I realized how empty this house felt without you in it. I told myself it was ridiculous, that you could not miss someone after knowing them for just a few hours. But I did miss you, Mina. Every day you were gone." Her eyes were bright in the firelight, unreadable. "I thought about you too," she admitted softly. "In Billings, when things were hard, I would remember that day walking across your land, how safe I felt with you, how easy it was to talk to you. I told myself I was being foolish, building up a chance meeting into more than it was. But when the teaching position fell through, the first thing I thought was that I could write to you, that maybe it was not just chance that brought me across your land that day." "It was not chance," Dawson said. "I do not believe in chance anymore. I think you were meant to come here, Mina. I think you were meant to stay." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Mina stood up, setting her sewing aside, and Dawson rose to meet her. They stood facing each other, only a few feet apart, and Dawson could see his own feelings reflected in her eyes. Longing, hope, a little fear. "I am afraid," Mina whispered. "I trusted someone before, gave him my heart, and he broke it. What if I am wrong again?" "You are not wrong," Dawson said. "I would never hurt you like that, Mina. I know you have no reason to believe me, that words are easy and proving them takes time, but I will spend however long it takes proving it to you. I promise you that." She stepped closer, and he reached out, cupping her face gently in his calloused hands. Her skin was soft, warm. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed. He kissed her softly, gently, a question and a promise all at once. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest over his heart. The kiss deepened, grew more urgent, months of loneliness and longing pouring into it from both sides. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dawson rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," he said. "Not as an employee. Stay with me and build a life here. Let me court you properly. Let me prove that I am worthy of your trust." "You already have proven it," Mina said. "Every day in 100 small ways. Yes, Dawson, Yes to all of it. They kissed again, and Dawson felt something settle into place in his chest, a rightness he had been searching for without knowing it. This woman, this moment, this was what he had been waiting for. The courtship that followed was unlike anything in Dawson's experience. They were already living under the same roof, already working together daily, which meant they got to know each other in deep, real ways rather than through formal social calls. Mina saw him at his worst, covered in mud after wrestling a calf out of a bog. He saw her frustrated and tired after a long day of difficult bookwork, and none of it dimmed their feelings for each other. If anything, the everyday intimacy of their situation deepened what was growing between them. Dawson began teaching Mina to ride properly, not just sitting behind him but handling a horse herself. She was nervous at first, but she had courage, and she learned quickly. He put her on his gentlest mare, Daisy, and walked alongside until she got comfortable. Within a week, she was riding confidently around the property. On Sundays, they would ride out together, exploring different parts of the ranch. Dawson showed her his favorite spots, places he had never taken anyone before. A high meadow full of wildflowers in spring. A stand of ancient pines where deer came to shelter. A creek that rang cold and clear year-round, fed by mountain snowmelt. Mina told him more about her past, about growing up in Boston, about her parents whom she had loved deeply. Her father had been a merchant, successful for many years before a series of bad investments ruined him. Her mother had been a teacher before marrying, and it was from her that Mina had inherited her love of learning. They had a good marriage, Mina said one Sunday as they sat by the creek, sharing the lunch Mrs. Chen had packed for them. Even when things got hard financially, they still had each other. My mother told me once that the secret was marrying your best friend, someone you actually liked spending time with, not just someone who looked good on paper. Sounds like wise advice, Dawson said. It is, Mina agreed. She looked at him, her eyes soft. I like spending time with you, Dawson Ridge, more than I have ever liked spending time with anyone. The feeling is entirely mutual, Wilhelmina Everett. In late November, the first real snow came, blanketing the ranch in white. Dawson woke to find Mina already up, standing at the window of the main room, looking out at the transformed landscape with wonder. I have never seen snow like this, she said when he joined her. Boston gets snow, of course, but it turns to gray slush so quickly. This is pristine. Wait until you have been through a Montana winter, Dawson said. You might not find it so beautiful when you are snowed in for days at a time. I will have good company, Mina said, smiling at him. That makes all the difference. As winter settled in and work slowed, they had more time to simply be together. Dawson taught Mina to play chess, and she turned out to be a fierce competitor. She taught him about literature and history, subjects he had never had much time for but found fascinating when she explained them. They played cards with Mrs. Chen in the evenings, the three of them forming an odd but contented little household. On Christmas Eve, Dawson asked Mina to take a walk with him despite the cold. She bundled up in a heavy coat and scarf, and they walked out under a sky brilliant with stars. He led her to a small rise that overlooked the ranch house and the land beyond. From here, you could see for miles in every direction, the snow-covered plain glowing silver in the moonlight. This is where I come when I need to think, Dawson said. When my father died, I came here and sat for hours, trying to figure out if I could really do this, run a ranch on my own. When my brother left, I came here again. This spot has seen me through a lot of difficult moments. It is peaceful, Mina said softly. Yes. But I did not bring you here to think about difficult things. I brought you here because this spot is important to me, and you are important to me, and I wanted to bring those two things together. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Mina's eyes went wide. "I know we have not been courting very long by traditional standards," Dawson said, "but we have been living together, working together for months now. I know you, Mina. I know how you take your coffee, that you hum when you are concentrating, that you are fierce when you think someone is being treated unfairly. I know you are brave and smart and kind, and I know I love you. I have loved you since that first day when you walked onto my land and changed everything." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring set with a small diamond. "It was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they got married. It is not fancy, but it is real, and it has been waiting for the right woman. You are that woman, Mina. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Mina's face, freezing in the cold air. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Dawson, I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when you were kind to a strange woman who stumbled onto your property. Every day since has just made me more certain. Yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, warm in the midst of the cold winter night. They were married in Alpine in late January in the small white church on the edge of town. It was a simple ceremony with few guests, just Mrs. Chen, a handful of Dawson's ranch hands, and some acquaintances from town. But it was perfect in its simplicity. Mina wore a dress she had made herself from fabric Dawson had bought her as a Christmas present, a deep blue that brought out her eyes. Dawson wore his best suit, the one he usually reserved for funerals and very important occasions. Mrs. Cheng cried, which surprised both of them, and even some of the tough ranch hands looked suspiciously moist-eyed. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Dawson kissed his bride in front of everyone, not caring that it was not exactly proper. Mina kissed him back, and the small congregation erupted in applause and good-natured whooping. The wedding supper was held at the ranch with Mrs. Chen outdoing herself on the cooking. There was roast beef and potatoes, fresh bread, apple pie, and even a cake that Mrs. Chen had somehow managed to make despite her claim that she did not know how to bake such things. The ranch house was full of laughter and music. Someone had brought a fiddle, and they pushed back the furniture to make room for dancing. Dawson danced with his wife, holding her close, aware of every point where their bodies touched. "Mrs. Ridge," he murmured into her ear. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Mina said, smiling up at him. "I like it very much." Later, after the guests had gone home or bedded down in the barn, after Mrs. Chen had diplomatically retired to her own quarters, Dawson carried Mina over the threshold of their bedroom. He had moved into the larger room that had been his parents', had spent the last week cleaning and preparing it, wanting everything to be perfect. He set Mina down gently, and she looked around, taking in the details. Fresh curtains, new bedding, a vase of dried wildflowers on the dresser, the best he could do in the middle of winter. "It is perfect," she said softly. Then she turned to him, nervous but certain. "I am ready, Dawson. Show me what it means to be your wife." What followed was tender and sweet. Both of them new to this but learning together, stumbling a bit but laughing through the awkwardness. Dawson was as gentle as he knew how to be, and Mina was brave and trusting. They came together in the way of new lovers everywhere, discovering each other, creating something new from the joining of two separate lives. Afterward, they lay tangled together, warm despite the winter cold outside. Dawson traced patterns on Mina's bare shoulder, marveling that she was really his, that this remarkable woman had chosen him. "What are you thinking?" Mina asked sleepily. "That I am the luckiest man alive," Dawson said. "That you walking onto my land last September was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was so tired that day," Mina remembered. and scared, though I tried not to show it. I had been walking for hours and I was lost, and I did not know what I would do if you refused to let me cross your land. Then I saw you walking toward me, and something in me just knew I would be safe, that you were someone I could trust. You can always trust me, Dawson promised. For as long as I live, Mina, you can trust me. She kissed him, soft and sweet. I know. And you can trust me too. We are partners now in everything. The winter passed in a cocoon of newlywed happiness. Dawson had never been happier in his life. Coming home from work in the barn or the fields to find Mina waiting, greeting him with a smile and a kiss, made even the hardest days worthwhile. They cooked together sometimes, bumping into each other in the kitchen and stealing kisses while Mrs. Chen pretended not to notice. They read together in the evenings, Mina curled against Dawson's side on the sofa. They made love with increasing confidence and joy, learning what pleased each other. By spring, Mina suspected she might be pregnant. She told Dawson one morning at breakfast, shy but excited. "Are you certain?" Dawson asked, his heart pounding. "Not completely, but fairly certain. All the signs are there. We will know for sure in a few more weeks." Dawson came around the table and pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy. A baby. A child of his own, of theirs. Family. "I am going to be a father," he said wonderingly. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Mina said, hugging him tight. The pregnancy was confirmed, and Dawson became even more protective of Mina than he had been before. She laughed at his hovering but secretly loved it, the evidence of how much he cared. As spring turned to summer, Mina's belly grew. She remained active, insisting on continuing her work as much as possible, though both Dawson and Mrs. Cheng ganged up on her to make sure she did not overdo it. On a warm August night, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and there were hours when Dawson paced the main room, terrified, listening to Mina's cries from the bedroom where Mrs. Chen attended her with the help of a midwife from town. But finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard the strong, angry cry of a newborn. Mrs. Cheng came out moments later, smiling. "You have a son," she said, "and your wife is tired but well. You can see them now." Dawson entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Mina was propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up when he came in, and her smile made his heart stop. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Dawson sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. His son. His and Mina's. The baby had dark hair like his mother and was red-faced from crying, tiny fists waving indignantly. "He is perfect," Dawson whispered. "You are perfect." "Thank you, Mina. Thank you for this gift." "We made him together," Mina said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but had not settled on anything. Now, looking at his son, Dawson knew. "Daniel," he said. "After my father, Daniel James Ridge." "Daniel," Mina repeated, testing it. "Yes, that is perfect." They named him Daniel, and he became the center of their world. Dawson had never imagined he could love anything as much as he loved this tiny person. He would sit for hours just watching Daniel sleep, marveling at his miniature perfection. He learned to change nappies and warm bottles, much to the amusement of his ranch hands who had never seen their tough boss so gentle. Mina was a natural mother, patient and loving, but also practical. She refused to be one of those women who became nothing but a mother, insisting on maintaining her work and her own interests even as she cared for Daniel. Dawson supported this, loving her independence, her refusal to be diminished by motherhood even as she embraced it. The years that followed were full and happy. Daniel grew from infant to toddler to small boy, sturdy and curious, always underfoot, always asking questions. When he was 3, Mina gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Grace. 2 years later came another son, Thomas William, and 3 years after that, their youngest, Emily Rose. The ranch house that had once seemed too big for one man was now full of noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family life. Dawson expanded the house, adding rooms as their family grew. The ranch prospered under his management and Mina's excellent bookkeeping. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, able to provide well for their children. Mrs. Chen stayed with them through it all, becoming a beloved grandmother figure to the children. She taught them Chinese phrases and made them special treats and told them stories from her own childhood. She was part of the family, and none of them could imagine the household without her. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Dawson and Mina took a rare day away from the children, riding out to that spot overlooking the ranch where he had proposed. It was a warm September day, the aspens beginning their golden turn, just like that day 10 years ago when a tired woman had walked onto his land and changed his life forever. "You ever regret it?" Dawson asked, holding her hand as they looked out over their land. "Staying here instead of teaching in Billings. All those dreams you had, the life you planned." Mina turned to look at him, her face older now, marked with the small lines of motherhood and hard work, but more beautiful to him than ever. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "This life with you, with our children, this is better than any dream I had before. Those other dreams were built on uncertain foundations. This is real, we are real, and I would not trade it for anything." "I love you," Dawson said. "More now than I did the day we married. Is that possible? To love someone more with every year that passes." "It is not just possible," Mina said, leaning into him. "It is inevitable when you have found the right person. You are my right person, Dawson Ridge. You were from the very first day." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. Their children were at home with Mrs. Chen, probably getting into mischief. The cattle would need moving soon. There was a fence that needed repair and hay to put up before winter came. Life was full of work and responsibility and challenges, but there was also joy, so much joy, in small moments and large ones, in watching their children grow, in the partnership they had built, in the simple miracle of being together. "Tell me again about that day," Mina said suddenly. "The day we met. What were you thinking when you first saw me?" Dawson smiled, remembering. "I was thinking that you walked with determination, like someone who had somewhere important to be. I was thinking I should probably chase you off my land, that I had work to do and no time for strangers. And then I got close enough to see your face, and I thought that I needed to know who you were, that I could not just let you walk through my life without finding out." "I thought you were going to be angry," Mina admitted. "Most men would have been, finding a strange woman trespassing. But you were kind. You offered me food and water and walked with me even though you had no reason to. That kindness saved me, Dawson. I was so close to giving up before I met you, but you reminded me that there were still good people in the world, still reasons to hope." "I am glad I walked with you that day," Dawson said. "Best decision I ever made." "Best decision I ever made was coming back," Mina said, "and staying and building this life with you." As the sun set, painting the Montana sky in brilliant colors, Dawson pulled Mina close. 10 years of marriage. 4 children. A thriving ranch. A love that had only deepened with time and trial. This was the life his father had dreamed of when he claimed this land, a legacy worth leaving. They rode back to the ranch house as twilight fell, and as they approached, they could see their children spilling out the door to greet them. Daniel, now a responsible 10-year-old, helping wrangle his younger siblings. Sarah's pigtails flying as she ran. Thomas toddling determinedly to keep up, and little Emily in Mrs. Chen's arms, waving chubby hands. This was home. This was family. This was everything. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of growing children. Daniel proved to have his father's aptitude for ranching, spending every moment he could outdoors, learning about cattle and horses and land management. Sarah was quieter, more studious like her mother, always with a book in hand when her chores were done. Thomas was the wild one, constantly getting into scrapes and adventures. And Emily, their youngest, was a perfect mix of all of them, capable and dreamy, practical and imaginative. Dawson taught all his children to ride as soon as they were old enough to sit a horse. He taught them to respect the land and the animals, to work hard but also to appreciate beauty, to be honest and fair in their dealings. Mina taught them to read and write and figure, insisted they study history and geography, made sure they understood the world was bigger than their Montana ranch even if this was where they belonged. They had their struggles, of course. No life is without them. There were years when cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There was a terrible winter when they lost a quarter of their herd to cold and disease. There was the year Thomas broke his arm falling from a horse, and they spent 3 terrifying days worried about infection. There were the ordinary conflicts of family life, siblings fighting, children testing boundaries, the hard work of raising humans into good people. But through it all, Dawson and Mina faced everything together. They had learned early in their marriage to communicate openly, to support each other, to be partners in every sense. When one of them was weak, the other was strong. When one was discouraged, the other found hope. They balanced each other, completed each other. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep one winter night when Emily was 7. They buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, and all of them mourned. She had been part of their family for so many years that the house felt empty without her. But Mina said she would not have wanted them to be sad for long, that she had lived a good life, and had told Mina many times how grateful she was to have found a home with them. As the children grew older and more independent, Dawson and Mina found themselves with more time together again. They took up their old habit of riding out together on Sundays, sometimes bringing the children, sometimes just the two of them. They would talk about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and worries, making plans for the future. "Daniel will take over the ranch one day," Dawson said once. "He has a gift for it, better than I ever did. But Sarah, I think she should go to school in the East if that is what she wants. She is too smart to spend her whole life on a ranch, even though she loves it here." "She has been asking about college," Mina said. "There are schools now that accept women. I have been looking into it. It would be expensive, but we could manage if we are careful." "Then we do it," Dawson said firmly. "My father used to say that land was the only legacy that mattered, but he was wrong. Education matters too. Giving our children chances we never had, that matters most of all." Sarah did go east for school, leaving when she was 18 to attend a women's college in Massachusetts. It was hard letting her go, but they were so proud of her. She wrote home every week, long letters full of her studies and new experiences. Daniel stayed on the ranch, working alongside his father, learning the business from the ground up. By the time he was 20, he was running half the operation himself, and Dawson was thinking about making him a partner. Thomas had his eye on expanding westward, maybe starting his own ranch someday. And Emily, still young, talked about being a teacher like her mother had planned to be, or maybe a doctor, or possibly a rancher like her father. She changed her mind weekly, and they encouraged all her dreams. On a spring evening when Mina was 45 and Dawson was 50, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Their children were all nearby but occupied with their own activities, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, as it had been in the beginning. "Tell me something," Mina said. "If you could go back to that day we met, knowing everything that would come after, all the joys and the sorrows, the easy times and the hard ones, would you still ask me to stay?" Dawson did not even have to think about it. "Every single time," he said. "In every possible life, in every version of that day, I would ask you to stay. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Mina Ridge. Everything good in my life flows from the day you walked onto my land." Mina blinked back tears. "I am getting old," she said, trying to lighten the mood. "Gray hair and wrinkles. Not the young woman you met anymore." "You are more beautiful now than you were then," Dawson said honestly. "Because now I know every line on your face and each one tells a story. I know the laugh lines around your eyes come from 20 years of smiling. I know the silver in your hair is from raising 4 children and keeping a ranch running. You have earned every mark of age, and they just make me love you more." "When did you become such a poet?" Mina asked, laughing through her tears. "When I married a woman who taught me there was more to life than cattle and fences. You showed me beauty, Mina. In words and ideas and in us, in what we built together." They kissed, still passionate after all these years, still finding comfort and joy in each other's touch. Daniel married at 23, bringing home a strong, capable woman named Helen who took to ranch life like she was born to it. They gave Dawson and Mina their first grandchild 2 years later, a baby boy they named Dawson after his grandfather. Holding his tiny namesake, Dawson felt the circle complete somehow, the passage from one generation to the next. Sarah returned from the East with a teaching certificate and a passion for education reform. She took a position at the growing school in Alpine, determined to give children in Montana the kind of education she had received back east. She married a lawyer, a good man who respected her intelligence and independence. They had 2 daughters, both as smart as their mother. Thomas did eventually start his own ranch, on land adjacent to the family property. He married a girl from town, and they had 5 children, a boisterous, happy crew. Emily surprised them all by becoming a veterinarian, one of the first women in Montana to do so. She traveled around the territory treating animals, eventually settling in Billings, of all places, with a husband who supported her career. The ranch continued to thrive under Daniel's management. He modernized in ways Dawson had never thought of, always respectful of his father's legacy, but not bound by it. The Ridge Ranch became known throughout Montana as one of the best-run operations in the state. Dawson and Mina grew old together, their hair silver, their faces deeply lined, but their hands still finding each other, their eyes still lighting up when they looked at each other. They had been married for 35 years when Dawson's heart, always strong as the land he loved, finally began to fail. The doctor from Alpine was honest about it. Dawson had maybe a year, maybe less. His heart was wearing out, simple as that. He was 65, had worked hard all his life, and it was catching up to him. Mina took the news with outward calm, but Dawson saw the fear in her eyes that night when they were alone. "I am not ready to lose you," she whispered. "I do not know how to be in this world without you." "You are the strongest person I know," Dawson said, holding her close. "You survived losing your parents, crossing a continent, starting over in a strange place. You can survive this too." "That was before I had you. It is different now. I know. It is different for me too. But we have had 35 beautiful years, Mina. More happiness than most people get in a lifetime. I am not afraid of dying. I am only sorry to leave you. Do not talk like that. Maybe the doctor is wrong. Maybe you have more time." "Maybe," Dawson agreed, though they both knew it was unlikely. But however much time I have, I want to spend it with you, enjoying every moment." That last year was bittersweet. Dawson's strength gradually faded, but his spirit remained strong. He spent time with each of his children and grandchildren, passing on wisdom, sharing memories, making sure they knew how proud he was of them. He rode out over his land one last time with Daniel, showing his son the boundaries, the special places, the history of every acre. But mostly he spent time with Mina. They talked for hours, remembering their life together. They looked through old letters and mementos. They laughed and cried and held each other. Every sunset they watched from the porch felt precious. Every morning waking up beside her was a gift. On a September morning, 36 years almost to the day from when they first met, Dawson woke before dawn feeling strange. His chest was tight, his breathing labored. Mina woke beside him, instantly alert to his distress. "Should I fetch the doctor?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "No," Dawson said. "Just stay with me, please." She held his hand, stroking his hair as the sky outside began to lighten. "I love you," she said. "I have loved you from the first day. You saved me, Dawson. Gave me a life I never dreamed possible. 4 beautiful children, a home, a purpose. Everything. You saved me too," Dawson said, his voice weak but clear. "I was just going through the motions before you. You made me live instead of just existing. You filled my house with love and laughter. You were my partner, my best friend, my love. Every day with you was a blessing." The sun was rising now, painting the room in golden light. Dawson looked at Mina's face, still beautiful to him, memorizing every detail. "That day you walked onto my land," he said. "When I saw you and knew I had to meet you, had to know who you were. That was fate, Mina. That was the universe giving me my one perfect gift, you." "I am not ready to say goodbye," Mina said, tears streaming down her face. "I know, but you will be okay. You have our children, our grandchildren. You have the ranch, the land we love together. I will always be here in this place, in the people we created. Promise me you will keep living, really living, even after I am gone." "I promise," Mina whispered. "I love you," Dawson said one more time. "Always and forever." "Always and forever," Mina echoed. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, flooding the room with light, Dawson drew one last breath and was still. Mina held him, rocking gently, crying but also somehow at peace. They had said everything that needed to be said. There were no words left unspoken, no feelings unexpressed. Their love had been complete. They buried Dawson on the same hill where Mrs. Chen rested, overlooking the land he had loved and worked all his life. The entire town of Alpine came to pay their respects, along with ranchers and friends from across Montana. His children and grandchildren stood strong despite their grief, a testament to the values he had instilled in them. Mina remained on the ranch, supported by her family. Daniel and Helen lived in the main house with her, and her other children visited often. She took comfort in her grandchildren, in watching them grow and learn and become themselves. She kept herself busy with ranch work, with community involvement, with reading and learning. But every evening at sunset, she sat on the porch and looked out over the land, remembering the man who had walked with her that first day and never let her leave. Remembering the love they had shared, the life they had built. She wore her wedding ring always, touching it sometimes as if drawing strength from the connection it represented. She lived for another 15 years, staying active and sharp until the very end. She had the joy of seeing all her children settled and happy, of watching grandchildren grow into capable adults, of even meeting several great-grandchildren. When Mina finally passed at the age of 76, peacefully in her sleep on a warm June night, her family mourned but also celebrated. She had lived a long, full life, rich with love and purpose. They buried her next to Dawson, reuniting them as they had always been meant to be together. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, Daniel had inscribed a simple epitaph that told the story of their love. She crossed his land. He walked with her and never let her leave. Together, they built forever. The Ridge Ranch remained in the family for generations. Daniel passed it to his children, who passed it to theirs. The house was expanded and modernized, but the bones of the original structure remained. The rooms where Dawson and Mina had lived and loved and raised their family. Their story became part of the ranch's history, told to each new generation as an example of what real love looked like. The hill where they were buried became a special place for the family, where they went to think, to remember, to connect with their history. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, family members claimed they could see two figures standing there, hand in hand, looking out over the land they had loved together. Just a trick of the light, probably, or maybe something more. Either way, it comforted them to think that Dawson and Mina were still there somehow, still together, still keeping watch over the land where their love story began. The story of Dawson Ridge and Wilhelmina Everett became legend in Alpine and the surrounding territory. It was the kind of story people told when asked if they believed in fate, in love at first sight, in the idea that two people could be meant for each other. Because, if you believed their story, and everyone who knew them did, then you had to believe that some loves were written in the stars, that some meetings were more than chance, that sometimes a woman could walk onto a man's land and change both their lives forever. And somewhere in Montana, on land that still bears the Ridge name, their love story lives on, as eternal as the mountains, as enduring as the grass, as true as the sunrise that greets each new day. A testament to the power of kindness, of taking a chance, of walking with someone and choosing never to let them leave. A reminder that the greatest adventures do not always involve grand gestures or exotic locations, but sometimes just involve saying yes to connection, yes to love, yes to building something beautiful together from nothing more than hope and hard work, and two hearts that recognized each other across an open field on a September morning so long ago.